guys, this is Scott with Golden Egg Guitars with another Lessons Learned. Talking about fretting. I hate fretting. Fretting is not fun. It's tedious. It's boring. It takes forever. One of the things I have learned is prepping your fretboard beforehand can really help out. Things I have done in the past, you get a little bit of super glue on your board and it doesn't quite rub off right and it looks a little funky. It takes a lot of work to clean up, if you can clean it up. I have also, in trying to hammer frets in, put dents in the damn fretboard from not having the hammer steady. All are bad things because you want to keep your board as pristine as possible. These days, I will generally finish my fretboard with a couple, 2-3 coats of True Oil or Tung Oil or something like that, just so it has a little bit of finish, so it brings out the prettiness of the wood, but it's also, you know, not raw. It has some protection against moisture and some other things. Alright, and then I will generally do a pretty good coat of wax over it as well. Makes it a lot smoother, makes it feel better when you play, but that also keeps super glue from sticking to the wood. What I usually do, since I lucked into finding this gel super glue, and these days almost every fretboard I do is bound in natural wood. So, I don't know, you know, someday I get rich and famous, then I can get a fret press and their little tang nippers. So I'll put my fret in place so I can guesstimate how much tang needs to come off. I will cut it. I like to cut just a little bit shorter than the fret, but not much, because you want as much tang in there as possible. But if you have too much, then you'll have trouble getting it in place, or it'll, you know, tear up your binding, or, you know. Do one more quick dry run. Take my gel super glue, and I will dab just a tiny little drop on a few places on the end of the tang. So when you press or hammer it into place, it smears along the way and doesn't get too much on the outside. Okay, then I will set the tang in place, hold it in place, give it a good whack on either end, and then lightly from the center out finish it off, and then give it a few good whacks to make sure it's good and seated. And of course, visually inspect to make sure you're actually seated well. I take Kleenex or something so I can, something very thin, so I can mash a fingernail into the groove between the fret and the board to clean up a little bit of super glue splooshes out. There we go. And each fret as I go, I will nip it off even with the board. Every, I don't know, 5 to 7 frets, I will stop and use my fret file to go ahead and clean the sides up, so they're pretty well flush. So when it comes time to actually do the whole thing, you know, you may have to hit just a little tiny bit, and then you can go ahead and bevel. But seems to be easier to do, you know, a handful at a time. So hopefully you hammer them in nice. Get them seated well, but not beat the shit out of them. and your board's nice and flat to start with, once you're done with this and it's time to level, you won't have a whole lot of work. Okay, once we got all the frets in, you know, like I said, every few frets, I kind of like to just take a break and get that batch flush with the neck. Not rabid, just, you know, cleaning them up a little bit, get them close. Alright, so once we're actually done getting them all in, then we can make sure that they're all flush together. I took a plastic, I don't know, notebook sleeve thingy, cut a notch in it just so I can wrap this around the head to protect it. Because a lot of times with your file you have a tendency to clip your ears, which is no good. Nobody wants that. Okay, and we are flush with the binding. Okay, now, like I said, while I'm fretting, I'll stop every few frets and, you know, 5 to 7 frets and just get them level with the binding. However, you don't want to put any bevel on it then. You want to wait until they're all done before you mess with the bevel, so that you can be consistent and make sure that the bevel's the same across the whole thing. Put just a little bit of angle on it so we can bevel it just enough to soften it up, but we want to leave as much meat on the fret as possible. So, once it's time to bevel, make sure everything's nice and flush. If you've already checked, I'll put just a little bit of angle. I'm not deathly worried about my angle. And I can tell I'm starting to dig into my binding a little bit, which it's wood binding and it's helping to soften up that corner a little bit, so not a huge deal, but you don't want to get crazy. And there we go. Just a slight bevel. Like, subscribe.